Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders in the path they took to create change. Past guests include Joe Polish, Roland Frazier, and Kevin King. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you to protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 28 years. So if you're a company that has software, product, or a design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. And you could email my team at welcome@goldsteinpc.com to explore if it's a match to work together. You could also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have with me here today Ken Burke. Ken is an all-star entrepreneur and thought leader. He's one of the true pioneers in the e-commerce world and in the software realm. He founded Market Live, which is a market-leading enterprise-class e-commerce software platform that's used by major merchants and has generated $2 billion in online sales. He sold Market Live to Vista Equity Partners for a 9-figure exit. Now he runs the EntrepreneurNOW network, which provides learning resources for entrepreneurs at all stages and has a ton of free resources. You should check it out. He is also the author of Intelligent Selling, The Art and Science of Selling Online, as well as his recent best-selling book, which took him 10 years to write, Prosper, 5 Stages to Thriving in Business and Life. It's my pleasure to welcome here today, Ken Burke. Welcome, Ken.
Oh, hey, Rich. Hey, great to be here. I'm super excited to be chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So then let's see where to begin. I mean, let's talk about a Market Live. So what made you decide to build that instead of something else?
Yeah, well, I mean, when entrepreneurs are young and they're fresh out of grad school or undergrad school, I was fresh out of grad school with my shiny degree, my master's in entrepreneurship. It's like, oh, you have a degree in entrepreneurship. Okay, that's different. You go into I don't know how much thought you do it. You do it as a passion. And I think I fell into e-commerce very early, 1995, because I had a client that said, hey, can you build some e-commerce stuff for us? I was really into this thing called the web, which unfortunately, and I'm dating myself, was new in 1993, actually. When I started working with it, it was literally just out. It was not mainstream at all. I think the Netscape browser came out in 1993. And so in 95, when I was beginning to build e-commerce websites, literally, it was all brand new. So I rode the wave up for 21 years, sold it to Vista Equity Partners, actually 10 digits. Sorry, my little correction on my bio there, our fault. But it was a great exit and a great ride, up and down, went through everything. Sequoia Capital was my first investor. And I think if your listeners know Sequoia Capital, usually most people do. They are Google and Apple and Yahoo and everybody you can imagine. Got funded by Sequoia Capital. That is big.
Yeah, but basically you put them on the map, right?
No, I wish I could. They
came later, right?
Love for me to say that on a podcast, right? I wish I could. But you know what? We had a successful exit, and it was a really great process. And happy to talk about any and all of that. And certainly, how investors and exits look at IP overall, because plays a pretty important role as you're attracting capital.
Yeah, well, you're singing my song right now, so let's talk about that. So what role did IP play in getting a company funded and in exiting?
Yeah, and I think a couple of things. First of all, and I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. It's a passion of mine, and so I work with companies currently. I also have my own company, Microcasting. I have a couple of companies, but Microcasting, where I'm going through the same things that your listeners are going through right now, which is, do I patent? And those are questions that you can help them answer. Is it worth it? What's the process look like? How important is it? I have one of my entrepreneurs that's developing what's called floating solar. And it's literally a revolutionary way of generating solar in the North Atlantic Sea and on lakes and other things. And we absolutely had to patent it all. And then we joint ventured it with a company called European EE. I'll just use and that patent was incredibly important to the overall partnership. The joint venture that we created with them, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. They actually even helped us with the international patent. We didn't know exactly how to do that, but we did the domestic patent ourselves. And that was integral to our agreement that now we're starting, he literally is an inventor, and we've developed all of the prototypes to really change the way that solar is generated on water. Not in water, but on water, the actual panels are, and that can withstand incredible tolerances. So I tell you that because that joint venture would have never happened without the patents. In my own experience, that's just one of the ones that popped to mind very recently. And kind of an interesting story. I like being associated with something that's going to help change the world. Even though I have really little to do with it, the inventor is amazing. In my experience, what I've run into in the past is, and even with my coaching of entrepreneurs, is two things. When you go out and get investment, when you try to get investment, even the first investment, the first thing, within that first 15 minutes of talking to an angel investor or a VC or Sequoia Capital or anybody, they're going to ask you, what makes you unique, special, and different? And why can't somebody come in like Facebook or Google and just eat your lunch? That's the first question. I mean, it's one of the main questions I get. And they all, I think all the VCs and angel investors, have this little playbook. I always called it a playbook. And on some page somewhere, they say, ask this question. And that's the question that gets asked. Because you either have, maybe you have a ton of customers are already amassed, and it's really hard to displace you because you have so many customers. Or you've developed technology that is very hard to replicate, but you don't have a patent on it. Or the best answer I can give, the number one answer is, I've got it patented, or copyrighted or trademarked, depending on what it is, and it can't be duplicated, at least protected for a period of time, right? And then it kind of oh, okay, I'm over that. I move on to the next issue. You don't have enough revenue, you don't have enough ARR, or whatever the objection will be, but they always want to understand what that is. And the easiest answer is to say, hey, I've got a patent on it. So it is, and that is true both for a investment of even $1 million, $500,000, an angel investor, or VCs like Sequoia Capital, who I've obviously dealt with, or the sale of the company, because I was able to luckily sell my company, had a great exit, and thank goodness, knock on wood, after 21 years, which is not always easy to do, to Vista Equity Partners, which took it, and now it's probably, the company got merged to another set of companies, probably worth $2 or $3 billion now. It wasn't when I sold it, but they've done a lot with it since then. And I got to tell you, one of the things that was in the process was, what are your patents? What are your trademarks? What are your copyrights? How am I protected when I buy this asset called Market Live, my enterprise class e-commerce software that we did $2 billion, not in all time, a year in commerce, $2 billion a year from a lot of major retailers. So when they're buying that asset, they want to know how they're protected. So it totally makes sense if you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I gather from that is it makes a difference in the beginning, and it makes a difference in the end, and pretty much everywhere in between. And so
would I tell everybody to run out and get a patent? No. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm sure you wouldn't either.
It's got to be the right patent. It's got to be the right.
Got to be the right patent. Exactly. And you're an expert on that. I'm not, but I can say that you have to assess within your business in the overall business strategy. It's not just because it's easier to get. I will say, if you have a patent, it's easier to do certain things, or some protection that protects you from your competitors. Otherwise, what they're going to ask is, again, how are you competitively differentiated? Why can't 3 other people or 5 other people or 20 other people come in and just take? So I always also tell my entrepreneurs, myself, what is your unique competitive advantage, right? And it's not, the unique competitive advantage is for the market, and it's not a patent, that's for the investment side, but your unique competitive advantage out there in the market and positioning your technology against everybody else's. That's really what you're trying to do from a strategy perspective. And a patent could fall into that because nobody can duplicate what you do. Right. And you can weave that into a story that can be very powerful, right? Well, give an example. We used to own the sub patent to the shopping cart, and we used it in our sales pitch it was relevant for 5 or 6 years. Here's what happened. There were, I forgot what they're called. They're people that buy patents or buy the
They
patent.
sometimes call them patent trolls.
Thank you. There we go. I couldn't remember the name. Oh God, and they bought the one on a shopping cart, like a shopping cart.
Right.
So they started suing all retailers in e-commerce and people were paying them, like big companies were paying these guys. And so I got in early on the settlement, and I paid them $50,000. And I said, I want a sub patent on it. I don't know exactly what that meant. I don't even know if it's an official term. And I want to cover all my customers now and in perpetuity. For $50,000, they did it, but I was able to go in to new customers and say, oh, by the way, you know that thing that you're otherwise going to have to pay because you're using a shopping cart? I've got a sub patent on it. I protected all my
I think maybe
customers.
there's a sub license, perhaps.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, probably not a sub patent. It was a long time ago, but I mean, can you imagine the shopping cart being patented? It's like it was universal even at the time, but it was.
Well, yeah, there were some crazy patents that were granted, maybe unjustifiably, some of which were for things like sending a fax and
right.
And so, yeah, and there were companies that went around capitalizing on that. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, your unique competitive advantage. So I think the idea is that unique competitive advantage is something in the marketplace that makes a difference for your company to your customers. And so then
Correct.
if you take that and that you're able to protect that, that's a real opportunity. If you're able to actually protect that thing that is differentiating you in the marketplace, then that's a valuable patent.
Exactly. So I think, and exactly, it's in the context of the unique competitive advantage strategy that then you take that and spin it into your unique value proposition, which is a different strategy in your business, or your messaging strategy, where maybe it even goes on your website or it goes, in this and that. They can't get it anywhere else. And here's the deal. The more that you can lock in a customer to having to stay on your technology, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I was just talking to one of my entrepreneurs about this, and let me give you a real example. My entrepreneur was a SaaS-based software company. The software isn't quite as sticky as it should be right now. It's just not quite there yet, right? So they're trying to lock customers into a year-long contract so they don't leave, because it kind of takes 6 to 9 months before things start to really happen, and so on and so forth. Well, customers want to meet, especially retailers who are selling in the online space, want immediate results, right? So they didn't want to wait. So after 2 or 3 months, if they don't get results, they drop it, right? So what I'm working with them on is trying to engineer that. What's the hook? What makes you indispensable? Which could be, by the way, this is where it's leading to. A patent could make it because you're not going to get this anywhere else, right? That could be one reason. Another reason could just be that it's so vital to my business. If I don't have you, then give an example. If you're in the the e-com space and you don't encrypt your credit cards or you don't have security, you're not in business, period. You can't do it. So I had to buy all this technology in order to do that on behalf of my clients. That's a requirement to even do business. So being a provider of that services, security services, or what have you, which are, by the way, just going crazy right now in terms of growth, is because it's a requirement, because if anybody gets hacked or this or that, you're out of business. So people will spend it. So that makes you indispensable. All I'm saying is, how do you become indispensable? And one of those ways could be, well, I own a patent on X, and then you wrap it around your overall value proposition, and bada boom, bada bing, you can sign monthly contracts, right? Where I was getting to with the story was, instead of signing yearly contracts, which is the number one objective of these customers, if you are indispensable, I don't care, sign a month contract, because I know you're not leaving me. It's like somebody buying an e-commerce platform from me. They used to cost anywhere between $100,000 and $1 million. Then another 100 to 1 million to implement. We were a very expensive solution. And customers would minimally sign a 3-year contract. Some asked for 5-year contracts, because signing a 3-month contract didn't make any sense. I'm going to spend millions of dollars to test you out. So that's the other way of looking at it, is that you're indispensable, or you're so big, your implementation is so big that they can't pull you out very easily, right? And you want to be in that. If you can be in that business, it's a pretty good business to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so then I guess another way of looking at this is, it's kind of like when people are looking at hiring your company to build out their e-commerce platform, or to work with them to provide an e-commerce solution. In parallel, they are looking at, well, what would it cost for us to just do this from scratch? Which you said might cost them like $1 million or so. And unless there's some reason why it's you and there's no other game in town, why you're indispensable. So it's like, if, for example, you own the IP for a certain functionality that was indispensable, then they couldn't just say, well, we could either spend $1 million to build this on our own, or we could pay him X million dollars to become his client and have him build out our system. So it's like, when you have something that differentiates you in a way that it takes it out of the, well, what would it cost us just to do the same thing as you game?
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And a level of complexity for which, and we used to have, in the early days of the e-commerce world, we would have bigger companies say, we're just going to build it ourselves, which is incredibly insane because it's way too complicated now.
Right.
And even back then, it's not just a cart. There's a whole lot of components I won't get into that make it almost impossible to do it today.
And it was risky. It's like you could spend 6-9 months building it and then be now 6 to 9 months behind in getting your store launched.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have to continually update it with the features. And I can spend, $100,000 or $50,000 to build a feature and then roll it out to hundreds and hundreds of customers. If you're doing it on your own, which is a very bad, we're giving some sales strategies here of why people should, anybody that owns a software company should tell their prospects. It's just insane to build a lot of these tools on their own, which most people don't, right? There are still the cases where big IT departments in larger companies want to build everything in-house, but that's a lot smaller than it used to be. People just don't want to do that anymore, and they're getting smarter and smarter. But it's a really good argument. Yeah, you can build it, but how are you going to keep it updated? It's going to cost you millions of dollars to continually update this thing. When I continually invest in innovation, because that's my job as a tech company, and you don't have to worry about it, and you don't have to pay for it either, right? So,
yep, absolutely. Hey, let's talk about a few things here. So first of all, let's talk about microcasting. What you're up to these days, what you're building there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so my latest company, of course, I sold off that e-com company. Latest company is all around leveraging e-learning for sales and marketing purposes, kind of a cross between e-learning and CRM with a lot of new ways of thinking about e-learning as well. You're like, e-learning? Why do I want to put e-learning in my business? Well, heck, if you're a thought leader or you have a software company or you have a medical company or a financial company, those are our targets, but they're really any company. Even if you're a retailer, perhaps you've got to now see customers they don't just buy your product or service, they buy a solution. Mm-hmm. Part of that overall solution we call the whole product. The whole product incorporates add-ons, incorporates your core product, incorporates some of your implementation services, but also incorporates e-learning, both in the prospecting way, all the way through the customer journey to where they're even a post-customer. And here's why. It's not just that they need to be educated about your technology, they need to be educated about everything that surrounds whatever it is you do, right? So if you're selling a piece of equipment, like a piece of medical equipment, I'm just making this up, it's not only teaching them how to use the medical equipment. Let's say it does some diagnostics. I'm making this up again. Never used this example before today. But you also have to understand the perspective. Now they're going to expect you, the companies that are buying this, to provide that thought leadership on, well, not just what we're diagnosing and how it works, but what's the relevance of all these different diagnoses that you have to do, and start teaching the people that are using this machine, going back up the chain to understand, well, what's the cause of these, and how do you help your customers or patients explain it to them, and all these soft skills that are required. So positioning your company as being a thought leader, and I got to tell you, I did this at Market Live. We're doing it certainly at Microcasting, the new company, but you have to position your company as a thought leader, or you as an individual as a thought leader. And Rich, by the way, you're doing this now. You're doing it as we're speaking. Thought leader, book, website, free resources, free training, free education. All that's e-learning to me, right? Yep. I have a very broad definition of e-learning, right? Mm-hmm. So Rich is going to be a consumer of my technology, everyone. I'm kidding. I'm joking, yes. Of course. I hope someday, maybe. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that's all centralized. I want to make sure that, and this is a way of thinking in your business so that you can engage prospects, customers, partners, and even employees as well. You want to engage the customer. So I got to tell you, all the selling I've done for 25 years, I've done a lot of selling. I was the main sales guy at my company, going out there, shaking hands and doing all of that. The key is, especially if you're on longer sales cycles, the key on the selling side is lead nurturing. So it's attracting the customer, use e-learning to use the bait, right? Mm-hmm. Then lead nurturing, keep them in the funnel, educating them so they're a more informed customer, all the way to when they become customers, not just selling them the product or service, but then really evolving yourselves, which is what we did at Market Live. We didn't just sell software. We taught people how to do e-commerce, which means how to increase sales, how to grow their business, all of that. And that's why our customers stayed with us. That's what we do.
Wow. All right. Fascinating. And there's a lot to unpack in there. But you know what? I have a bunch of things I want to talk to you about, though, too, sure. Like, including the EntrepreneurNOW network that you created. So,
we created the network. It was interesting because we created the network about 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and I did it specifically so that and this is kind of an interesting IP connection. I didn't know e-learning. I'd come out of e-commerce. I didn't know e-learning very well. I said, I sold my company, went on vacation for a year, came back and said, what do I do with my life? Okay. And I'm like, I want to do something that's more impactful than I've done before. I don't want to just do it for money. I want to do it something that I can have an impact. So the first thing I said is, what do I enjoy doing? I love talking to entrepreneurs. Second thing is, can I build an entire environment around that so entrepreneurs have a place, free or otherwise, to get a lot of great information and help them, coach them along to where they're not giving up big percentages of their companies to accelerators or VCs, and they do things smartly. Okay. So, but what I really wanted out of the network was to learn how to do e-learning well, and then transfer that over into the technology company, which is exactly what we've done. I spent 3 or 4 years trying to master where the problems in e-learning, what's not working, what is working, what systems are out there. And I've used a ton of systems now so that I could model what we created at Microcasting. So that's a great way to create IP, by the way, is have a test bed. And a lot of entrepreneurs aren't patient enough to do what I just said, right? And I'm not very patient, as you can tell by the way that I talk and the accelerated rate that I talk at. I'm not very patient as well. But I knew that in order to master taking this out to the rest of the world and really creating something that was different, I needed to really understand it. And that's what I did. I built a company to do that. And it just happens now to be a standalone company that's profitable. So, and guess what? Little side note, it funds Microcasting now. So I built a company, made it profitable, and now it is, I don't have VCs right now. I fund it through EntrepreneurNOW. That's how it's being funded solely, so that I can own more of the rights to the company. I can own more of the percentage of company, right?
Yeah, fascinating. So, and basically, though, EntrepreneurNOW is e-learning, and so like you've basically created a specific e-learning platform to train entrepreneurs in what they need to know, what they need to understand, mindset that they should embrace. And you've taken that and you are now creating a platform that's helping other people or giving the ability for other people to then get their e-learning out there. Is that fair?
Right, exactly. What I did is I created the content. So I wanted to understand how content gets created. So the EntrepreneurNOW network is a content network. Like there's not a lot of technology.
But you created a platform though to make it work.
Exactly. What I did was I then built a platform from the learnings that I made from that. Right. So the content is amazing. We have like a couple hundred courses, and there's a lot of really great stuff there. It was my test bed, but I also in the same process was able to do something to help others as well. And that's what it's intent to do. But it is a content company, and then Microcasting is the software company that was birthed out of it, if you will.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That you basically you figured out, and then you made it so that you could help other people do.
Well, and guess where all my IP is coming from?
Yeah.
Right. And this falls right into what you're expert at. I created my IP out of the experience, and sometimes you have to do that. Now, again, entrepreneurs can do a ready, fire, aim strategy, which I talk about all the time. And I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy sometimes too. You get ready, fire, and then you're like, what am I supposed to do? Or we can take a step back sometimes when it's important. Sometimes ready, fire, aim is okay. You want to move fast in the market. You want to hit it. You don't need to get it all right. I'm good with that, right? Or another strategy is you step back a little bit, really figure things out, and then go all in. And that's in this particular case, that's the strategy that I decided to use. So far, it's working. So far, it's good. We actually built something that is highly relevant to people, which I was shocked at because, you kind of say, build it and they shall come. Sometimes a lot of times entrepreneurs do that. They're a solution, and I want them to listen to this. They're a solution in search of a problem. Entrepreneurs, you got to understand that you need to find the problem that you're trying to solve first. Identify the problem, and it's got to be really painful. This gets back to all the things we were talking about earlier about unique definition and making yourself sticky. Find something that people are really struggling with. In my case, it was lead nurturing and customer retention, customer renewals. If you're a SaaS business, one of the great ways to renew customers, because I lived it for 21 years, is you renew them by providing them with you're much more than just a software package or you're a solution that's continually helping them, and e-learning is an important component to that. So we found problems that people needed to solve, and then now we're solving them, right? And I can't encourage your entrepreneurs who are listening and others are listening to take that mentality, because we really, as entrepreneurs, we want to create a product first and then figure out where the problem is, and that's not the way you do it.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot with inventors and inventions too, is they'll invent a solution
Yeah.
And but if you dial it back and find, well, what was the problem that it's solving, there might be other solutions. There might be better solutions to that same problem.
Totally agree.
Yep. So that's great advice. Tell me about Prosper 5 Steps to Thriving in Business and Life. So you took 10 years to write this book. and just the title itself implies that it's kind of like sitting back, looking at your successful career and saying, kind of what's made me successful, what's made me happy. And so that's fascinating. So tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, no, well, it's funny. It took 10 years to write, and I only wrote on airplanes. So I did all of my research and consuming of data even prior to the actual writing of the book. And I'm very slow. And it's 300-page book, but it's not that big. It's a normal 100,000 word book. Just formulating what I wanted to formulate, it just took me that long. And I sat on it for a year here and a year there, just like a lot of other authors do. This is not an abnormal story when you're writing a book, but really the book is a cross between a personal development book and a business book. And really what that says is you got to get your insides working first before the actual business can really manifest itself. And that's just been my experience over time. So things like, the 5 key steps are, you got to accept yourself and because otherwise you're going to be continually taking everything that people do to you in a business, and they're going to be firing bullets at you all the time. I don't mean to use that as an example because that's not a good, but they're going to be trying to hit you, knock you down. And if you can't be strong enough internally, you can't spread that out to your employees, and you can't build that into your culture. Number one. Number two, you got to manage your ego. Oh God, entrepreneurs and some business people have huge egos. That will kill you every time. So I really want to make sure that we expose that and understand it. Then 3, we got to have clarity. I don't care in your personal life and your business life, you need clarity to understand where you're going. And the more pinpointed you are, the more likely you're going to get there. Now we understand that, but we got to go through a process of getting to that. And then taking action. What's blocking you from taking action? So this is, again, the personal development side of things, but these are real things that will stop you in business from actually moving forward. And then the final thing is a little touchy-feely called give gratitude. This is at the end of the day, how do you integrate gratitude within everything you do, including your business as well? And then there's a lot of other philosophies in there. But if you get your mind straight, you're good to go, right? I mean, that you're good to go. That's what that book attempts to do. And then I paired it with, after the book has been written, called Your Entrepreneurial Mindset, which is really giving a lot of business strategies that kind of back that up as well. And that's all on our website and kenburke.com and such. So anyway, that was a long answer. Sorry about that.
Awesome. I love it. And people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you. How do they go about doing so?
Yeah, for the book, you go to kenburke.com, KenBurke.com. For Entrepreneur Now, just go to entrepreneurnow.com, and you can grab any and all the free content that we have up there. And microcasting, if that interested you at all, microcasting.com will get you to the e-learning platform as well. So that's where we're at. And of course, you can always find me on LinkedIn at kenburke.com. I'm also a LinkedIn learning instructor. So if you have a LinkedIn learning subscription, you can take you can take some of my courses. They're not all up there, but you can take some of my courses as well as part of that subscription, free of charge. Awesome.
Well, Ken, really, thanks so much for taking the time to do this interview. This was great.
Oh, great. Yeah, I hope it was helpful to your listeners. I really appreciate all the great questions as well.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.